What's up, party people? Hey, we're out over here in Wayne Dalton. Don't think you can see that in the sign. The sun's really hot over there. I'll show it to you in a minute. We're out here in Wayne Dalton and we are picking up a Torquemaster spring system. Yes, we're going to be tackling a Torquemaster spring system. We're going to be talking about the challenges of this type of spring system. We're going to be talking about what you need to identify before ordering your Torquemaster spring system. And we're going to be going through some pro tips to help you change your Torquemaster spring system. That is, if your local Wayne Dalton actually allows the public to purchase it. So stick around. Okay, so here we have the Torquemaster. What's going on, boss? Here we have the Torquemaster spring system. We're going to be installing this in a 9100 model garage door. Now, it's important to understand that when you're dealing with Wayne Dalton, especially any of their 9100, 9605, the 8000 series, in fact, you need to make sure what type of door it is before you can even order this type of spring system. If you notice, it is a concealed tube. A tube concealed inside, you have two springs, much like your torsion system. You've got one spring that's going to be on the left, one on the right, but your right spring is your left wound spring, your left spring is your right round spring. Is this confusing? Of course it is. It's the garage door industry. We don't do anything like straightforward. So first things first, determine what type of door you have. Is it an 8000? Is it a 9405? Is it a 9605? And more importantly, does it have windows? Are there additional struts? All of those factors play a key, and they're important to the configuration of your spring system. So we're definitely going to answer those questions in the next install, or in this coming install. Check it out. Okay, so got some coffee. Need coffee. In order to do this, in order to stay in this game, we need coffee. Now, we don't necessarily need it, but it helps. And it helps when you don't spill your coffee all over your hand, too. Goodness. Okay, so Wayne Dalton Torquemaster happens to be one of those anomalies that I know most garage door guys that don't even attempt to replace it. In fact, most garage doors guys will they'll just convert it. Yeah, that's what they do. They basically take off Torquemaster, they replace the cables, drums, end brackets, bearing plates, center bracket, center bearing, and they just put torsion. Why? Because they don't want to mess with it, because they don't care about it, because they don't like it. I used to be one of those guys. But I'm not anymore. In fact, I would say I have grown to respect Torquemaster. Notice that I use the word respect, not necessarily like. And the reason why I don't like Torquemaster is because there are some limitations to, I guess you could say, its use. No, not its use. It's, in my experience, they just don't last as long as torsions. But you will find some use cases. There we go. We have some specific cases or scenarios where Torquemaster is absolutely, emphatically necessary. And I'll give you an example of that right now. Got my mask on. Cover California. Get covered, stay covered. Right? That's the way to do it. Yep. Okay, so here we have the door right now. This is a Wayne Dalton. Wait a minute. Let's guess what it is. Let's try and figure it out. Does it sound hollow? No, not really. It sounds like the door's pretty solid. Well, we know that usually on a non-insulated door, we could get a little bit of a resonating sound when we hit the outside. And that basically helps us to understand that a non-insulated door clearly will have that hollowness. Pretty simple. So the 9100 though has a much more solid field because of its foam compacted insulation. So what I'm trying to get at is that exteriorly, there's really no difference. You can't really tell the difference of what this door is. You really don't know what model door it is. You just know from the outside that it looks like a Wayne Dalton door. So let's see what it's like on the inside. Okay, party people, here we are now on the inside. And as you can tell, this garage door happens to be the model 9100. And we know this because of the 9100 style design. This is an insulated door that basically has, I hate to say it, but a cardboard paper-like feel to the inside. Can't tell you how many times the 9100 model gets so much hate. It gets a lot of hate. But in reality, this is a pretty good door. It's a polyurethane foam compacted door with struts that are built in. It's pretty solid. It's surprisingly a very fair R value with insulation, and at the same time, it's pretty sturdy. It's not a light door. I mean, it's lighter than most doors, but it's not a very light door. And with windows, it would be a lot more heavier. So here we have standard 16x7 16x7 polyurethane insulated 9100 model garage door. But what we have above it, that's very important. That right there is the Torquemaster spring system. Now, unlike torsion springs are visible on the outside. The springs are actually on the inside. And that's what we're going to be replacing today. And we're going to be going through some pro tips that'll help you to determine how to install this door safely, or I should say this door spring safely. Well, safely if you have the knowledge and the right tools for it. So let's get into it. Okay, so the source of the failure, or I should say the side of the failure to this spring system, is going to be on this right side. But remember, when we're talking about the right side, we're talking about the left wound spring. And I want to show you guys something. I want to show you what it's doing, or what it's not doing. Okay, technically it sounds like I'm tightening it, right? Or tightening that spring. It sounds like it's turning. It sounds like it's tightening so that way I can lift the door with ease. But I want you to notice something. I'm gonna lift the door right now. Super heavy. Oh, why did it stay? Why won't my door close? What's wrong with my spring? Broken spring. Or the problem to the spring system is on this side of the door, because once that safety lock mechanism cuts into place, then that's basically your Torquemaster system telling you, hey, I'm sick. Hey, I have a problem. Hopefully it's not anything serious. No, it actually is serious. And quite frankly, in this case, you're gonna have to determine first which side you're having the issue. Now that side we can easily turn and it will tighten properly, giving us a little bit strength to the door and providing a lot less weight to it. But for example, because this is in, what's happened is that the lock mechanism has come in. So what we do need to do, and this is pretty easy, what we need to do is we need to disengage it. And by disengaging it, we should be able to lift the door up and close it. And that's one of the main features to the Wayne Dalton Torquemaster system, is that it's a safety precaution to make sure that if there's any slack in the cables, the door doesn't fall, it doesn't collapse. Of course, it's a very good way that it gets homeowners to say, hey, my door won't close, I need someone to come out here. Gosh, it's kind of like how Apple does it with their batteries, right? I mean, hate to go on a tangent, but it's kind of like a built-in system where you're forced to, in fact, look for a professional. And, I've always likened Wayne Dalton, especially the Wayne Dalton system, the 9100 door, the Torquemaster system, to Apple, because they share that very same ideology of staying within the same ecosystem. In fact, that spring system was designed for this type of door. So if you're into that, if you subscribe to that ideology or that type of mentality, then you're going to be okay with it. I don't think it's bad or good. you know, if you stay within a specific family or a DNA of type door, or the specific DNA of a door, spring, motor, they all technically are within the same ecosystem, then they're going to work at its optimal level. That's why people love Apple. That's why people don't go away from it, because it's designed to work all together with their Macs and their iPhones and their iPads. You guys get the gist. So we're definitely going to lower this door down. I'll show you how to do that right now. You're just going to basically lift that arm, and then we're going to lift up the door. It's a little handle. I'll do it. There we go. We got it up there. And then very safely, and hopefully this is not up all the way, because if it's up all the way, then it could come down. And again, do not try this at home. You want to get a professional. By the way, the pro tips, techniques, and ideas on this channel are designed to help you make a better decision. If you do not have the certainty, if you do not have the knowledge, if you do not have the experience to do this, call a professional. By no means is this video meant to give you, or I should say, by no means is this video meant to discourage you on not taking care of what you need to in your home. But there are some safety measures that you need to take in place, and it's always important to check first before getting into something that you obviously don't have a lot of knowledge of. So let's go ahead and just bring the door down, okay? So we're gonna lift up, grab it by both hands. Do not put your hands in the spacing anywhere. You're gonna use the struts, lift up, and you heard that click? That click basically says that we disengaged it, and now we're able to close it. It did come down a little heavy because the door is a little bit heavy. There's a lot to this door. Let's go ahead and start replacing it and getting it worked up. So Wayne Dalton does something funny with their Torquemaster system and how they wind it. They actually use what is known as a winding tool. It's a device, I don't have it here with me in fact, but it is a device that technically is supposed to be applied onto the side of the springs, and you're supposed to use a normal drill to turn the gear inside that end bracket. I don't use it. I don't use it because I don't think it's very good. I think it's a faulty design. I'll say faulty. I don't think it's designed very well. And what I end up using is in fact a socket wrench. I use a socket wrench like this, you know, pretty standard socket wrench. It's not anything out of the ordinary, right? The socket wrench happens to be a 5/8. And so what I do is I have to release the arm, and I have to make sure that with lots of care and very gently, I turn the spring, releasing the tension. But you're gonna have to hold down on the gear spring, so that way, or I should say the gear lock, so that way it doesn't tighten. And it's a pretty, if you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little tricky, because you could just be tightening your spring when in reality you need to loosen the tension. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to loosen the tension on this side, okay? I'm going to show you how that can be done. So I'm going to, if you see me there, okay, you're going to put up that little arm, okay? And you're going to make sure, that you turn, so that way you can disengage. So right there, okay, right there, we give it a turn, but I'm actually going to hold down on this lever, and it's going to come loose right there. You see that? See how there's a lot of pressure in there? Like if you let loose of that, it can get away from you. All right, so what we want to do is we want to make sure we let loose of this lever and then lock it back in. Same thing, we're going to turn it. We're going to turn. There we go. And technically, we have to lock it back in. So you see, it's not that easy. What you're trying to do is you're trying to release tension. So once you get it loose, then you're turning it. And you're going to do this until there's no more tension to that cable. This is tedious, and quite frankly, it's also dangerous. So, the point is, if you are afraid of this stuff and you don't know how to work it, you don't know how to use this stuff, you don't know how to use normal tools, then call a professional, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to help. Let's get this unwound. So loosening that spring is a tedious process, but the idea is basically you just want to make sure your cable is just nice and loose. See how your cable right there no longer has tension? Want to check the other side as well. Want to make sure that that other side is also loose. And yep, there you go, loose cable. So then clearly the tension is no longer there. We can then commit to start taking off the end brackets. We're going to need a 7/16 to take out those screws from the side and from the center. Of course, it's very smart to get rid of this or take this off right here. This is your J-arm, your arm system right there. So you want to make sure you take that off, okay? Okay, party people, so once you get the end bearing plate off, this is your end bearing plate, okay? Once you get this off, you want to make sure that you've got these screws here. You want to keep these screws first, and you also want to keep any of the other hardware that comes with it, like for example this nut and bolt right there, because they do fasten onto the track assembly. But it's very important that you don't lose this right here. You don't want to lose this. This is very, very important, because this is your gear to tighten the spring on the inside. So just like you see it, in fact, if you might have to take a picture of it before taking it off, you want to make sure that it's positioned the same way, so that way when this turns, that it's going to be locking. It's going to be locking within the gear inside. So that gear inside has to lock with it. You're supposed to hear it turn. So super important, do not lose that plastic piece. Do not lose or do not position the plastic nylon gear a different way, because if you do so, you're going to have trouble tightening your spring system. Pro tips, all day, every day. Okay, so as you can tell, we've taken off the old Torquemaster spring system. Now, another pro tip for you, when taking off the end bearing plates, you're also going to take off the drums. Now, those drums are very important, because you don't want to lose them. Normally we would have bought a complete kit, but to lower the cost for installation for this customer, we're going to keep all of these. We have our end bearing in here, we have our drum, end bearing drum, and of course our cable. And what we technically did to get this off was to loosen this screw, pull a little bit on our cable, and simply slide this off. It takes some ingenuity, it takes some experience and knowledge on how to do that. If you don't have the certainty to do that, be very careful, especially if you haven't taken off the tension of your springs. If your cables are still tight and you don't know if you've taken off the tension off of both springs, then do not take off those end brackets. Please don't, because you will get hurt. I care about you party people. I want y'all to stay safe, and so in order to do this right, it's important to understand all of those principles and apply them in the replacement of the spring system. If you don't understand it, if you don't want to fiddle with it, if you don't have the tools for it, call a professional. Now here's the moment of truth, okay? We're going to make sure that what we had in here was real, the real deal, the real problem, okay? You guys see this? Okay? It's our spring. This was the black spring on the right side, which is our left wound spring. Here we go. Let's see if I was right. Yep, broken spring. Look at that. Can you believe it, party people? This is our culprit. This is not supposed to be broken like this. In fact, we should not be able to take out the spring easily from the side. Clearly, That was the source of our problem. Now we're going to take the new spring system and we're going to go ahead and install it up. Let's check it out. Okay, so there it is. We have the new spring up, the new Torquemaster up. And you want to be very careful doing this as well. Because if you don't remember how you took off the old spring, well then you could be confusing which side your red spring and your black spring are. Your right spring is your left wound spring, your left spring is your right wound. Red and black always helps, and you know, I don't know if you can tell right up there, that red spring right there is letting you know that this is the left side. Another thing that Wayne Dalton does always when it comes to their Torquemaster system, they'll always have the sticker, the model number, the sticker of the spring system and its configuration on the left hand side. So they do a couple of things to help you stay focused on putting up the new system. Now before putting up the new system, what some guys do, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but here's a pro tip for you. Some guys actually leave this plastic sheath. Let's see if you see that there. This is a plastic, not zooming in very well, but this plastic sheath is on the ends of the spring. They hold the spring from not falling out. I normally keep this on. In some cases where there's a tight fit, I will take these off and I will apply a vice grip so that way the spring doesn't move. Either way, you want to keep these. Why? Well, once taking off the old spring, putting on the new one, and you take these off, you want to make sure that you keep these to put them on the old spring, so when you haul it on your truck, you're not hauling it, or you're hauling off in your truck, you're ensuring that the springs won't fall out in the street. You know, that's happened tons of times. Why? Because I didn't apply these onto the old springs. So if you want to keep things safe, if you want to keep you know, the road clean, it's always best to use what you have. And so you can keep these by placing on the spring at the top and then taking them off up there, or you can take them off, you know, on the ground and applying vice grips so that way your springs don't fall out. Either way works. Pro tip for you. And do not forget that center bearing plate. That center bearing plate has to go on first before you put your spring up, because that's what's going to hold the spring, or the tube, the spring tube, onto the header. Very important. Don't forget it. Again, very important points, pro tips that will help you to get this job done. Okay, party people, so we have the new spring up, new Torquemaster spring system. It's up. We now have our end bearing plates to it. We have our drums now installed onto it. Some ask, well, what are we going to do with all this excess cable? This excess cable right here, well, it's pretty simple. We're going to wrap it around, and we're going to make sure that it's just simply secured. And there's a little hole that we're going to be able to place the other end. We're going to be able to place this other end of the hole, or I should say, other end of the cable, into this small little hole, so that way it's secured right there. Of course, we're going to wrap it around, make sure that it's not loosey-goosey. So, as you see, we have pretty much everything we need right now in place. Now, all we have to do is tighten the tension. One of the things that I like to do, and because it's very important to make sure that on both sides the cables are at equal length. So we don't want one drum wrapped further or longer than the other side. We want to make sure that they're at equal length. And then when you set in the Torquemaster tube, go ahead and put a vice grip. Lock it on. You would do this on the torsion spring as well, coincidentally, but you're going to lock it in so that there's no movement. Make sure that the cable is tightened onto the drum. Just make sure everything is nice and set. Of course, use the hardware that you took off. You know, use the right screws. Make sure everything is nice and tight, because at this point, we're going to start putting tension to the spring. Okay, party people, so we have put tension onto the Torquemaster spring system. Now, how we did that specifically, again, we didn't use that winding tool that Wayne Dalton provides. I don't care for it. I simply use the 5/8 socket wrench. Now, How do I know? Because on that tool, there's numbers that when you apply it onto the side of the spring and you use a drill, very slowly those numbers will turn, and it'll give you the right amount of turns to tell you when you have sufficient tension to your springs. Because I don't use that device, I have to basically, through feel, I have to apply the same amount of turns to each side of the spring, and I do it basically equally. In other words, I'll start on one side and I'll give up to about 20 turns, and then I will go to the other side and do the same. And then I test the door weight. I go to the left side, start again, give it another 20, and then on the right side, do the same. And then I test the door weight. As I begin to feel more tension in the springs, and as I begin to feel the door lighter, then I know I'm reaching my proper door balance. When that proper door balance is achieved, then you know your springs are tightened or tensioned at the right level. You don't want to over tighten, you don't want to under tighten, because the cables will tend to, the end bearing plates, the drums, actually it's the drums and the end bearing plates, they will detect when there's slack in the cables, and it'll click in that locking mechanism. But again, once you know that you have tension in your spring and your door is properly balanced, then you're good to go. And let's go ahead and see if this door has good balance. One hand. Oh, look at that. Voila. Oh, party people. There you go. Tackling the Wayne Dalton Torquemaster system is not it's not something you should be afraid of. It's something that, quite frankly, most garage door guys in our industry don't like to tackle. I think they just don't want to fuss with it because they're just so used to torsion springs. But in this specific scenario, we had to go with a Torquemaster because of the shelving on this right-hand side. So we did the customer a solid in helping them in optimizing their garage door use and the garage door needs. Again, party people, the ideas, the pro tips, the techniques, and the principles in this video are designed to help you make a educated decision. I am nobody. I'm simply here to provide you these pro tips and tech reviews for all your residential garage door needs. So if you have a question, leave one down below with a comment. Leave a comment or a question down below. Please like the video if you haven't yet. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Y'all stay safe.